Hello, my name is Gaynor. I'm running a 1600p on a Grace Q-Zone frame. So today I'm going to be talking about the design of a quilt to meet the space that you have with the setup, because we have only really about 4 inches that we can successfully quilt on this system, bearing in mind that this takes up space, and the more you advance your quilt, the bigger the roll becomes and the less your space is. So when you design a quilt from the very beginning, before you cut your blocks, you need to think about how you want to quilt it. Do you want to just do edge to edge quilting? In other words, you just do a design, the same design all over the quilt, starting from one side and ending at the other. And when you get to the other, advance and do the same thing back. That's beautiful on these frames because it doesn't take a lot of concentration. But if you want to do a little bit of custom quilting, which is what I did on here. When I talk about custom quilting, I'm talking about perhaps doing one design here and doing something else there, and having places where you're doing different things. It's not the same thing all over. So that's custom quilting. And when you want to custom quilt, you need to think from the very, very beginning planning stages of a quilt. So if you have a look at this quilt, I have got a block here, and this was a 4-inch square. I think it's a 4-inch square. And all I could successfully quilt on here was half, because if you have a look here, that is where my needle is stopping on the bar. Okay, so I can't really move this back anymore. And then I come short and I can't get the whole thing in. So yes, I probably should have designed it with a smaller block if I wanted to be able to quilt the entire thing in one pass. But what I did was a feather design, and I split the block up into halves. Okay, so I drew with my disappearing pen, I drew lines on here that was half. Okay, and down there, and I put a spine here and I quilted that way. And quite easily I can get in here to quilt that, and then I moved on to quilt that. Then I came across here and I can quilt these long sort of elongated triangles, and I can quilt that quite easily. Now what I wanted to do on here is one large feather, which will have a spine running down the center. But of course, I can just squeeze here maybe to get that in, and I can get to there. But really, I would like if I want my feather to really extend to this point, it's not long enough. So what I did was I will draw a spine on with my pen, and I will just do the one side of the feather. Then I will move on and I'll do this section here. And this is what you can see here. I ran out of bobbin thread. And once I have finished doing those, I'm going to just do the halves of the feathers. And then I will advance the quilt up, and I'll come back and do this section here and the rest of the feather and the bottom of this block. Now, as you can see, I already got the bottom of this one done, because it was done when the quilt was loaded the other way. So what I did was I actually basted my leader cloth onto the selvage of the quilt when I started it. I use the selvage because the selvage is straight, and I basted it on because I'm finding that if I'm pinning, all of my pins are getting bent when I clamp on. So spend the extra time and baste your leaders onto the tops and bottoms. So I actually had this loaded the other way, and I started at this side and I worked down. I now want to do this border here. So you're going to say, well, why did I do that? Well, first of all, if I'm to just try and quilt this border, this feather on this border, I will literally be able to start here, come down, and I'll do that much and I have to stop. Then I have to advance and do another little bit. It's far easier to do it lengthways because I can quilt all of this all the way down, move the quilt from left to right, and finish my feather. So if you look at your domestic machine when you're quilting, you will move your quilt around very easily. You can do a beautiful border, one side to the other, turn the quilt around, start the other side. But on a long arm, you can't do that. So you need to learn how to do your designs from all angles. So, for example, the feathers, I needed to quilt them lengthways, starting this side and going that side. I needed to start at this point and go in that direction, start in this point and go in that direction. Then I started at the bottoms and I went up. I didn't come from the top down. It was just easier for me. So you need to learn to do your designs from all directions. But as you can see, a large quilt on a Q-zone is possible with just a little bit of thought when you're doing design. If you're going to do a whole cloth design and you want to run, for example, say you have flying geese running the length of the quilt and you want to quilt feathers, just for example, all the way down your flying geese, you will actually load the flying geese that way, running that way, not the other way. So just a little bit of thought when you plan your quilt before you start cutting and how you load it. And you can see here, I actually don't even have my leader cloth on here because as I said, I had it on here. I've taken it off and I have enough backing and fabric just to clip this side on. So again, when you load your quilt, just leave enough backing and batting just so that you can come back and do your borders, your side borders. So that's all for today. Like and subscribe.